15. Gospel legends who left their careers due to incurable diseases. What happens when the most powerful voices in gospel, those who lifted hearts, inspired generations, and filled churches with glory, are suddenly silenced not by choice, but by incurable disease? Behind the spotlight and standing ovations lie stories of unimaginable battles where faith collided with frailty. These weren't just singers. They were giants who carried entire communities with their songs. Yet illness forced them to step away far too soon. Today we uncover the painful yet inspiring journeys of 15 gospel legends. Stay with us, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence for more unforgettable stories. Daryl Coley. Daryl Coley's name is etched in gospel history as one of the most gifted tenors to ever step onto a stage. Born on October 30th, 1955 in Berkeley, California, his early life was marked by challenges. As a child, Coley faced severe illness when doctors discovered he was blind in one eye, a condition that might have discouraged others. Instead, he found comfort in music, teaching himself piano and immersing himself in both classical training and church choirs. By his teenage years, Coley was already directing choirs and demonstrating a vocal range so expansive that fellow musicians would later call him a singer's singer. His professional career blossomed in the late 1970s when he joined Edwin Hawkins and the Edwin Hawkins Singers, a group already famous for "Oh Happy Day." Tour Just Daryl, 1986, introduced listeners to his ability to blend traditional gospel with jazz and contemporary stylings, a rare skill that made him stand apart. Songs like "He's Preparing Me" and "I Can't Tell It All" weren't just melodies. They were heartfelt testimonies that resonated across denominations. But behind the artistry was a silent battle. In the 1990s, Coley was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, a disease that slowly began attacking his body. Complications led to kidney failure, requiring frequent dialysis. His once energetic stage presence diminished, yet his faith and passion never faltered. Friends recall him arriving at rehearsals physically weak, but spiritually strong, insisting that ministry must go on. He later served as pastor at Love Fellowship Tabernacle, proving that even when his body betrayed him, his voice of leadership remained. By the mid-2000s, his health severely declined. Hospital stays grew longer, and hospice care eventually became necessary. Despite these struggles, Coley continued to mentor younger artists, reminding them that true ministry was about impact, not applause. He recorded until his final days, his last works filled with the weight of experience and the depth of faith. On March 15, 2016, the gospel community mourned as Coley passed away at age 60. Tributes poured in from Yolanda Adams, Donnie McClurkin, and countless others who saw him not just as a peer, but as a giant whose artistry shaped their own. Andraé Crouch. Few names in gospel music carry as much weight as Andraé Crouch, a man often hailed as the father of modern gospel. Born July 1, 1942 in San Francisco, California, Crouch grew up in a deeply religious household where music and ministry were inseparable. Despite struggling with dyslexia as a child, he developed a sharp ear for harmony and composition. At age 14, he formed his first gospel group, the Kojix Church of God in Christ Singers, which included future legends like Billy Preston. By his 20s, he was already reshaping the sound of worship with a bold blend of gospel R&B and pop influences. His group, Andraé Crouch and the Disciples, broke barriers in the 1960s and 70s, introducing contemporary rhythms and instruments into church music. Songs such as "The Blood Will Never Lose Its Power," "My Tribute to God Be the Glory," soon and very soon became anthems not just in gospel churches, but in mainstream worship across the globe. Crouch also ventured into the wider music industry, working with icons like Michael Jackson, Madonna, Quincy Jones, and even contributing to Disney's The Lion King and Spielberg's The Color Purple. This crossover influence made him one of the most recognized gospel artists of all time. Yet behind his groundbreaking career lay years of declining health. Crouch battled diabetes, strokes impaired. Yes, in California, often preaching from a wheelchair when his body would no longer allow him to stand. His resilience amazed fans and fellow musicians alike. In 2009, when the world gathered to honor Michael Jackson, Crouch led the choir at the pop star's memorial service, a moment that proved his artistry was still intact even while illness weakened his body. By late 2014, his condition worsened after battling pneumonia and congestive heart failure, common complications of advanced diabetes. On January 8, 2015, Andraé Crouch passed away at the age of 72, leaving behind a legacy larger than life. Tributes poured in from every corner of the music industry. Gospel greats called him a pioneer, while secular stars praised him as a musical genius who bridged faith and mainstream culture. His funeral drew thousands, turning into a celebration of both his life and his enduring music. Crouch's story reminds us that illness may limit a person's physical body, but it cannot silence a calling. His songs remain fixtures in churches worldwide, sung in multiple languages, proving that his mission outlived him. Every time believers sing "Soon and Very Soon," they keep alive the vision of a man who believed music could unite heaven and earth. Walter Hawkins. Walter Hawkins was born on May 18, 1949 in Oakland, California, into a family steeped in both music and ministry. The younger brother of Edwin Hawkins, Walter, first rose to prominence as a member of the Edwin Hawkins Singers, who stunned the world in 1968 with the crossover hit, "Oh Happy Day." Yet it was Walter's decision to carve his own path that transformed him into one of gospel's most influential voices. In the early 1970s, Hawkins founded Love Center Church in Oakland, a ministry that blended worship with social outreach. From there, he launched the Love Alive album series projects that combined powerful vocals with cutting-edge production. The albums became some of the best-selling releases in gospel history, with Love Alive 2, 1978 alone, selling over 1 million copies. His warm baritone voice and songwriting genius produced classics like "Marvelous Be Grateful" and "Thank You" songs that still echo in churches today. But in 2008, his life took a dramatic turn. Hawkins was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, one of the most aggressive and deadly forms of the disease, with a 5-year survival rate of less than 10%. Even as his health declined, he continued to serve his congregation and create music. Friends and family often recalled how he would leave chemotherapy sessions and still show up to choir rehearsals, determined to keep inspiring others through song. Despite the relentless progression of his illness, Hawkins refused to retreat quietly. In 2009, he reunited with his siblings and fellow gospel greats for a Hawkins family reunion tour, giving fans one last glimpse of his unmatched artistry. He was also preparing Love Alive 6 before his passing, showing that his creativity never dimmed, even in the face of suffering. Beyond music, Walter used his platform to advocate for health awareness, particularly within African American communities disproportionately affected by diseases like cancer. He worked closely with organizations like the American Cancer Society, urging people to pursue early detection and preventative care. His courage made him more than a singer. He became a beacon of education and hope for those walking the same difficult path. On July 11, 2010, Walter Hawkins passed away at just 61 years old, leaving the gospel world in collective mourning. His funeral in Oakland drew thousands, from church leaders to musical legends who had been touched by his ministry. Walter Hawkins' life reminds us that greatness isn't measured only in chart success or awards, but in the ability to turn personal suffering into communal strength. Though pancreatic cancer silenced his voice, his songs continue to resonate, offering comfort to those facing storms of their own in every note of Be Grateful. Albertina Walker. Albertina Walker, affectionately crowned the Queen of Gospel, was born on August 29, 1929 in Chicago, Illinois. From a young age, her voice carried both power and conviction, earning her a spot alongside gospel greats like Mahalia Jackson. In 1951, she founded Thaz, a group that became a launching pad for future legends such as Shirley Caesar, Dorothy Norwood, and Inez Andrews. Walker's leadership and commitment to excellence helped redefine female gospel ensembles, shaping the genre's sound for decades. Her career spanned over 6 decades, during which she recorded more than 60 albums, won a Grammy Award, and received countless honors, including induction into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Her songs like Please Be Patient With Me and Lord Keep Me Day by Day were not only gospel staples but heartfelt prayers that resonated with believers across generations. Yet behind the stage lights and accolades, Albertina faced a slow, devastating battle with illness. By the early 2000s, she was diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease (COPD) and emphysema conditions that caused progressive damage to her lungs. Breathing became increasingly difficult, forcing her to rely on oxygen even during performances. Friends recalled how she would step on stage with an oxygen tank nearby, determined to give every note she had left to her audience. In August 2010, she was hospitalized on her 81st birthday due to severe respiratory complications. Doctors performed a tracheostomy to ease her breathing, but her condition continued to decline. Would you still chase your calling if every breath you took felt like a battle? Despite her suffering, Albertina never allowed illness to silence her purpose. She became an outspoken advocate for respiratory health awareness, particularly in African American communities disproportionately affected by such conditions. Through the Albertina Walker Scholarship Foundation, she also ensured that young gospel artists could pursue their dreams regardless of financial or health challenges. Her last major appearance came at the Chicago Gospel Music Festival. Jessie Dixon. Jessie Dixon, born on March 12, 1938 in San Antonio, Texas, carried gospel music across borders in a way few artists ever managed. A prodigious pianist and singer from childhood, he was discovered in the 1960s by gospel legend James Cleveland, who quickly recognized Dixon's extraordinary gift. From there, his career took off. Over the next 5 decades, he released more than 20 albums, wrote hundreds of songs, and earned 7 Grammy nominations. His powerful baritone, combined with his exuberant stage presence, made him a household name in both the gospel and secular worlds. Dixon's influence wasn't confined to the church. He famously collaborated with Paul Simon on the Graceland tour in the 1980s. Performing in front of audiences worldwide and introducing gospel to fans who had never experienced it live. He also shared stages with icons like Diana Ross and Billy Preston, proving that gospel could stand proudly alongside any genre. Despite these mainstream achievements, Dixon always insisted that his true mission was to spread the message of faith. Songs like I Am Redeemed and God Can Do Anything But Fail became anthems of encouragement for countless believers. Yet in the later years of his life, Dixon faced his most difficult trial: cancer. Dixon's home in Chicago became a gathering place for younger artists who sought wisdom from him. Despite being weakened physically, he mentored tirelessly, teaching not just music, but also resilience and humility. His later recordings reflected a deeper intimacy with God, each lyric infused with the reality of someone who truly knew what it meant to trust in faith during suffering. On September 26, 2011, Jessie Dixon passed away at age 73 after a courageous fight with cancer. The gospel community was shaken not only because of his extraordinary artistry, but because of the joy he embodied even in hardship. His funeral services were filled with testimonies of how his songs had healed, uplifted, and carried people through dark times. Jessie Dixon's legacy lives on through the vibrant recordings he left behind and the generations he inspired. He was not just a gospel singer, but an ambassador who carried the message of hope across continents. While cancer may have dimmed his earthly light, his music continues to shine brightly, reminding the world that joy is not the absence of suffering, it is the triumph of spirit in the face of it. Thomas Whitfield. Thomas Anthony Whitfield, often called the Maestro, was born on November 30, 1954, in Detroit, Michigan. From a young age, he showed an extraordinary gift for music, mastering piano, organ, and composition with a sophistication that stunned older musicians. By his 20s, Whitfield had already become a sought-after arranger known for blending classical techniques with the emotional depth of gospel. He later formed the Thomas Whitfield A for unlike many gospel artists who focused solely on vocal performance. Whitfield's genius lay in his ability to shape music from the ground up. His arrangements used complex harmonies, modulations, and orchestral influences, giving gospel choirs a new level of artistry. Songs like "We Need a Word from the Lord" and "I Shall Wear a Crown" became standards, pushing choirs to expand both technically and spiritually. His approach was so innovative that musicians across gospel, R&B, and jazz studied his work for inspiration. By the early 1990s, Whitfield was at the height of his influence. He was collaborating with major figures like the Clark sisters and Vanessa Bell Armstrong while mentoring a new generation of choir directors in Detroit. Friends often described him as a perfectionist, someone who could spend hours fine-tuning a single chord until it carried the exact emotional weight he envisioned. His studio in Detroit became a hub where music felt more like a spiritual laboratory than a workplace. But tragedy struck unexpectedly. On June 20th, 1992, at just 40 years old, Thomas Whitfield died suddenly of a massive heart attack while working in his recording studio. The gospel community was stunned. He had been preparing for an upcoming concert with his choir, and there were no public signs of declining health. His passing robbed gospel music of a visionary who had only begun to show the full scope of his creativity. Though his life was cut short, Whitfield's legacy endures in every gospel choir that dares to explore beyond the ordinary. His innovative style opened doors for more experimental arrangements while preserving the sacred core of the genre. Today, when choirs lift their voices to "I Shall Wear a Crown," they are not just singing a song, they are carrying forward the vision of a man whose brilliance remains timeless. Rance Allen. Bishop Rance Allen, born on November 19, 1948 in Monroe, Michigan, grew up in a modest family where church life was the heartbeat of the community. From childhood, he was recognized as a prodigy with a voice that could soar across octaves. Along with his brothers, he founded the Rance Allen Group in 1969, a trio that would go on to revolutionize gospel music. Blending traditional hymns with the rhythms of soul, R&B, and even rock, Allen broke barriers that few dared to cross at the time. His unique falsetto runs and gritty, soulful cries earned him comparisons to secular giants like Otis Redding and Sam Cooke, while still keeping his music firmly rooted in worship. The group's breakout hit, "I Belong to You," 1979, showcased their ability to modernize gospel without diluting its message. Over the years, they released more than 20 albums, won stellar awards, and earned a Grammy nomination. Rance Allen's willingness to experiment musically made him a bridge between generations, influencing gospel stars like Kirk Franklin and Marvin Sapp, as well as R&B icons who admired his vocal mastery. Behind his artistry was also a deep devotion to ministry. In 1985, he became pastor of New Bethel Church of God in Christ in Toledo, Ohio, where he served faithfully for over 3 decades. Balancing pastoral duties with his career, he embodied the dual calling of preacher and performer. But his later years were marked by mounting health struggles. Allen battled heart disease and kidney failure, requiring regular dialysis treatments. Despite this, he refused to step away from music. In 2020, he released what would become his final project, "God Has Been So Good," a poignant testimony recorded while he was still undergoing treatments. Fans were astonished at how his voice, though tempered by age and illness, still carried the fire and conviction that had defined him since his youth. On October 31, 2020, just weeks before celebrating his 50th wedding anniversary, Bishop Rance Allen passed away at age 71 due to complications from a medical procedure. His death sent shockwaves through the gospel community. Tributes poured in from legends like C.C. Winans, Kirk Franklin, and Yolanda Adams, each acknowledging how Allen had paved the way for their artistry. Allen's legacy is vast. He not only left behind unforgettable songs like "Something About the Name Jesus" and "Miracle Worker," but also a blueprint for how gospel could expand creatively while remaining true to its spiritual core. His joyful stage presence, his relentless innovation, and his willingness to mentor younger artists made him much more than a singer. He was a gospel father figure. Inez Andrews. Inez McConico Andrews, born April 14, 1929 in Birmingham, Alabama, earned the nickname the High Priestess of Gospel for her soaring soprano voice that seemed to reach straight into the heavens. She rose to fame in the 1950s as a member of the Caravans. Her defining hit Lord, Don't Move the Mountain, Call, Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2009, a testament to her decades of contribution to the genre. But as time passed, Andrews began facing the slow, undeniable decline brought on by age-related illnesses. By her late 70s, she had reduced her touring schedule, no longer able to sustain the rigorous travel and physically demanding performances. Yet her voice, her most sacred gift, remained remarkably strong well into her 80s. Even when confined to a chair on stage, she could electrify an audience with a single note. Her last years were marked by quiet courage. Despite battling multiple health conditions privately, she continued to appear at major events. In 2012, just months before her passing, she performed at the Chicago Gospel Music Festival, where she received a standing ovation. The crowd, aware that this might be one of her last appearances, celebrated not just her voice, but her resilience. Friends described her as determined, never willing to let illness silence her ministry. On December 19, 2012, Inez Andrews passed away at the age of 83. The gospel community mourned deeply, recognizing that one of the last great pillars of the golden era of female gospel had departed. Tributes poured in from artists she had mentored and inspired, including Shirley Caesar, who called her a giant among us. Inez Andrews' legacy endures in the countless choirs and soloists who still perform her songs. Her recordings continue to uplift, reminding listeners that gospel is not just music, but a lifeline in times of struggle. While illness may have slowed her body, it never touched her spirit. To this day, when her voice soars through speakers, it carries the same urgency and faith that defined her entire life. Dorothy Norwood. Dorothy Norwood, born May 29, 1935 in Atlanta, Georgia, earned her place in gospel history as the world's greatest storyteller. Her ability to weave real-life struggles into song made her performances unforgettable. Whether singing about a mother's prayers, a denied opportunity, or the triumph of faith, Norwood's contralto voice carried an authenticity that connected deeply with her listeners. She first gained attention as a member of the Caravans. The Denied Mother showcased her gift for narrative-driven gospel, turning everyday experiences into spiritual testimonies. Audiences didn't just hear her music, they felt as if they were living inside her stories. Launching her solo career in 1964, she quickly established herself as a powerhouse, recording more than 40 albums over the next 5 decades. Hits like Victory Is Mine and Shake the Devil Off became staples in churches across America. She was also known for her tireless touring schedule, often performing more than 200 nights a year during her peak. Yet behind this relentless drive was a woman who endured her own share of challenges. As she entered her late 80s, Norwood began experiencing chronic health problems common in advanced age. Though her family did not publicly disclose specific conditions, she gradually scaled back her touring schedule. Traveling became difficult, but her passion for music never faded. In 2018, she released No Request, an album that proved her storytelling gift and vocal strength remained intact even as her body weakened. Friends and colleagues often described visiting her Atlanta home, where she continued mentoring younger singers, offering guidance from decades of experience. Do you think true greatness comes from fame or from leaving behind lessons that outlive you? In 2021, she received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Rhythm of Gospel Awards, a recognition of her unwavering contributions to the genre. Just months later, on March 17, 2022, Dorothy Norwood passed away at the age of 92. The gospel community mourned the loss of a matriarch who had given everything to her craft. Her funeral brought together generations of artists who acknowledged her not only as a singer, but as a teacher-mentor and example of endurance. Norwood's legacy lives on in her recordings, in the countless choirs still performing her songs, and in the many artists she influenced. She proved that gospel is not only about vocal power, but about telling the truth of human experience through faith. Even in her later years, when her health slowed her physically, her spirit never ceased to inspire. Today, when believers sing "Victory is Mine," they echo Dorothy Norwood's lifelong message that even through struggle, triumph belongs to those who hold on to faith. Orlando Draper. Orlando Draper was born on September 30th, 1963 in Memphis, Tennessee, and though his life was tragically short, his impact on gospel choir music remains immeasurable. From an early age, Draper displayed not only vocal talent, but also an uncanny ability to direct and organize voices into powerful harmony. By his teens, he was already known in Memphis for his energetic leadership style. In 1986, he founded the Associates, a choir that would soon rise to national acclaim for their spirited performances and contemporary edge. Draper's vision was revolutionary. He took the traditional black gospel choir sound and infused it with modern rhythms, intricate arrangements, and electrifying stage presence. His 1996 album, Live. The experience became "My soul doth magnify the Lord, and he touched me," inspired not only congregations, but also fellow choir directors across the country. He proved that choir music could be both sacred and stylistically bold, appealing to younger generations without losing its spiritual depth. But in the midst of this meteoric rise, Draper faced a silent and devastating battle. He suffered from kidney failure. The outpouring of grief was enormous. Thousands attended his memorial services in Memphis, where his Associates choir, many of whom had been with him since their teenage years, sang through tears. Their performance was not just a tribute, but also a continuation of the worship style Draper had taught them, bold, passionate, and unapologetically powerful. In the years since his death, Draper's influence has only grown. His arrangements are still staples in choir repertoires worldwide. Prominent artists like Kirk Franklin, Hezekiah Walker, and Donald Lawrence often cite him as a major inspiration. The Orlando Draper Memorial Scholarship was established. Although his career lasted barely over a decade, Draper forever altered the landscape of choir music. He proved that choirs could be dynamic forces on stage, moving beyond rigid formality into something vibrant and alive. While kidney disease silenced him too soon, his voice continues to echo through the countless choirs that still follow his blueprint. Mattie Moss Clark. Mattie Moss Clark. Born March 26, 1925 in Selma, Alabama, is remembered as the mother of modern gospel choirs. She wasn't just a singer or director. She was an innovator who reshaped the very structure of gospel music. After studying music formally, she moved to Detroit, Michigan, where she became a powerhouse in the Church of God in Christ Kojic. It was there that she began developing her groundbreaking three-part harmony system. Clark wasn't only a director, but also a mentor. She poured her energy into training young musicians, and perhaps her most famous protégés were her own daughters, the Clark sisters, Karen, Dorinda, Jackie, and Twinkie, who would go on to become gospel icons in their own right. Known for her sharp ear and uncompromising standards, Mattie could command a room with just her hand gestures and piercing gaze. She believed gospel music should be offered with the highest level of excellence because it was ultimately a gift to God. Her career, however, was shadowed by health struggles. Diagnosed with diabetes, she lived with the disease for decades. As it progressed, it caused severe complications. By the early 1980s, she faced a devastating blow when doctors amputated one of her legs. Yet even from a wheelchair, Mattie continued to direct choirs with authority, proving that physical limitations could not silence her musical genius. Despite her declining health, she remained active in the studio and in church conventions, shaping generations of gospel leaders. She produced recordings, taught workshops, and inspired countless choir directors who traveled to Detroit to learn under her guidance. In 1982, she recorded Mattie Moss Clark Presents the Clark Sisters, a project that highlighted both her musical brilliance and her daughter's rising stardom. Her health, however, continued to worsen. On September 22, 1994, Mattie Moss Clark passed away at the age of 69 due to complications from diabetes. Her funeral in Detroit was a historic gathering of gospel legends, with choirs and artists from across the country paying tribute. Mattie's legacy is still felt in every gospel choir that sings with precision and power. The Clark sisters often credit their mother's discipline and vision as the foundation of their success. Beyond her family, thousands of directors and singers still carry her teachings, ensuring that her impact extends far beyond her lifetime. Mattie Moss Clark's story is one of brilliance, sacrifice, and unshakable faith. Though illness took her body, her innovations continue to breathe life into gospel music. Every time a choir lifts their voices in three-part harmony, they honor the woman who gave structure to their song. James Moore. Reverend James Moore, born February 1, 1956 in Detroit, Michigan, was blessed with a voice that carried both power and tenderness. From an early age, it was clear that music would be his calling. By the time he was in his 20s, Moore had emerged as one of gospel's most promising voices, known for his ability to move seamlessly from thunderous declarations of faith to intimate, heartfelt whispers. His career quickly took off in the 1980s with the release of albums such as Live at Jackson State University, 1982, and I Will Trust in the Lord, 1983. Moore's vocal artistry was unparalleled. Songs like Jesus Will Fix It and I Don't Mind Waiting became. But in the late 1990s, Moore began facing a devastating battle cancer. The illness gradually weakened him, forcing him to reduce his rigorous touring schedule and recording commitments. Still, Moore refused to let sickness define him. Even during treatment, he continued to record often from a seated position, his voice filled with the urgency of someone who understood that time was precious. Fans were deeply moved by the spiritual weight in his later performances, as if each lyric was both a prayer and a farewell. His health continued to decline, but his faith remained steadfast. Moore became an example of endurance for his congregation and fans worldwide. Those who visited him during his final years often spoke of his unwavering positivity, his desire to comfort others even as he endured intense suffering. On March 3, 2000, at the young age of 44, Reverend James Moore passed away, leaving the gospel community heartbroken. The tributes that followed highlighted not just his vocal brilliance but also his integrity and spiritual leadership. Fellow artists recalled how he poured his heart into mentoring others, often reminding younger singers that gospel music was about ministry, not performance. His funeral brought together choirs, preachers, and fans who celebrated a life of service through song. Though cancer silenced his body too soon, James Moore's recordings remain timeless. When believers sing I Don't Mind Waiting today, they are reminded of a man who trusted God even when the prognosis was grim. His story is one of faith under fire, proving that true ministry does not end with life's struggles, but continues to inspire long after. Reverend James Moore may have left the stage early, but his voice still preaches through every note he left behind, an eternal sermon of hope, perseverance, and faith in the darkest of times. Myrna Summers. Myrna Summers, born March 30, 1949 in Washington, D.C., built her reputation as one of gospel's most resilient and encouraging voices. From her earliest days in church, her gift for music was undeniable. By her 20s, Summers had become a formidable force in gospel, known for her emotionally charged delivery and unwavering commitment to the ministry of song. She was not only a singer, but also a choir director, songwriter, and minister, shaping communities through both her music and her leadership. Her breakthrough came with the powerful anthem, God Gave Me a Song, 1970s, which quickly established her as a leading figure in contemporary gospel. In 1979, she released we're gonna make it a timeless classic that continues to uplift listeners facing hardship. Over her career, she recorded more than a dozen albums and earned a Grammy Award for Best Soul Gospel Performance in 1979. Summers also became an influential presence in gospel conventions and workshops, mentoring choirs across the country with her distinct style of combining traditional power with modern flair. As the decades progressed, Summers continued to produce music while serving as Minister of Music at Reed Temple AME Church in Maryland. But in her later years, she began facing serious health challenges that forced her to slow down. Although her family respected her privacy and did not disclose specific details publicly, those close to her witnessed how these struggles limited her ability to travel and perform at the same pace she once did. Despite this, Summers remained active in guiding choirs and mentoring younger singers, always offering encouragement, even when her own body grew frail. Her resilience was most evident in how she navigated illness with grace. Friends described her as someone who never complained, but instead redirected her energy into teaching and counseling others. Her later recordings carried a deeper intimacy, as if every lyric reflected her own testimony of perseverance. Even in semi-retirement, Summers' phone never stopped ringing with calls from artists seeking guidance from the woman who had helped define their spiritual and musical journey. Though her public appearances became rare, she remained a cherished figure within the gospel community. Choirs across America continue to sing her compositions, keeping her spirit alive in Sunday services and major gospel events. Her influence extended internationally as well, with gospel groups in Africa and Europe performing her works as part of their repertoires. Myrna Summers' story is one of dignity in adversity. While illness forced her to step back from the demanding pace of her career, it never silenced her message. Instead, she transformed her struggles into ministry living proof that gospel is not only sung, but also embodied. Her legacy continues to inspire singers and listeners alike, a reminder that true greatness lies not in how loudly one can sing, but in how faithfully one can endure. Milton Brunson. Reverend Milton R. Brunson, born June 28, 1929 in Chicago, Illinois, became one of the most influential choir directors in gospel history. A gifted preacher, musician, and mentor, he was the founder of the legendary Thompson Community Singers, affectionately called the Tommies. From their beginnings in 1948 as a small youth choir in his church, Brunson developed them into one of the most celebrated gospel ensembles of the 20th century. Under his leadership, the Tommies recorded more than 20 albums, won much Stellar Awards, Grammy Award in 1995 for their album Through God's Eyes. Their timeless hits, like Safe in His Arms, I'm Available to You, and I'm Still Here, are still staples in churches and choir repertoires across the world. Brunson's directing style was vibrant and commanding, often described as a blend of pastoral care and musical precision. He didn't just train singers, he nurtured disciples who carried both the message and the spirit of gospel. But behind his enduring smile and tireless ministry, Brunson faced serious health challenges. By the mid-1990s, he was quietly battling heart disease from conditioned heart failure. Despite the growing toll on his body, he continued to lead the Tommies with the same passion, directing from pulpits and stages as if nothing could stand between him and the music. Friends later recalled that even when fatigued, he would summon strength at the sound of a choir beginning to sing, conducting with fire in his eyes until the very last note. On January 17, 1997, Reverend Milton Brunson passed away at the age of 67. His death came as a shock to many in the gospel community, especially since the Tommies were preparing to celebrate their 50th anniversary. His funeral was one of the largest gatherings of gospel musicians in Chicago's history, with choirs and artists from across the country uniting in tribute. The Tommies themselves performed through tears their harmonies, carrying both grief and gratitude for the man who had shaped them. Brunson's legacy did not end with his passing. The Thompson Community Singers continued under new leadership, ensuring that his signature sound, a perfect blend of heartfelt worship and technical mastery, would not fade. Many of his choir members went on to become influential gospel leaders, carrying his teachings into new churches and choirs worldwide. His recordings remain a blueprint for choir directors, showing how gospel music can be both spiritually rich and musically excellent. These 15 gospel legends remind us that even incurable disease could not erase their voices, their faith, or their legacies. Each of them turned pain into purpose, leaving behind songs that still heal and uplift millions today. But here's the question. Do we remember them more for their battles with illness or for the way they reshaped gospel music forever? Their stories are both heartbreaking and inspiring, and they challenge us to reflect on what truly endures. Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned to Legends of Black Excellence for more.